How does Army air defense work? Well, in order to answer that question, I want you to think of the Navy. Stay with me now. Whenever some tin pot little dictator starts running their mouth and threatening their neighbors, America takes an aircraft carrier and parks it off that dictator's coast and says, "What now?" But what if there's no coast? Well, that's where Army air defense comes in. When you think about it, air defense is really the Army's only strategic arm. It doesn't just protect critical assets like airfields or bases, it can also project power. Army air defense missiles like the MIM-104 Patriot have a range of roughly 99 miles or 160 kilometers. This means you can reach far into an enemy's airspace from the protected borders of a friendly nation. This means you dominate that airspace and can shoot down enemy aircraft, drones, and even ballistic missiles. And what really blows my mind about ADA or air defense artillery is that these young men and women are essentially air traffic controllers who can snuff out hundreds of lives with just the press of a finger. Launch at the wrong target, and you've just killed hundreds of people in a civilian airliner. Fail to launch at a ballistic missile, and you've just taken a chemical warhead to the face. The amount of mental stress on ADA personnel has been likened to actual trigger-pulling combat, as stated by this Marine infantryman who joined the Army as a Patriot crewman. This Marine actually shot down incoming missiles that were flying toward the United Arab Emirates. So when you're under fire as an air defense crewman, you're under an enormous amount of stress, but you can't move and you can't shoot back. All you have is faith in your equipment. So let's talk about this equipment and how a Patriot missile system actually works. Okay, just give me 1 minute to pay the bills here. This video is sponsored by Doculock. Back in 1994, Microsoft founder Bill Gates sat on a gigantic pile of paper to illustrate how much paper could fit on a CD-ROM. Today, companies still use paper, and they're stuffed in these filing cabinets and nobody even knows what's in them. Paper documents are useless. They're hard to search through. They're hard to reference in a modern electronic document. They take up a lot of space. They might as well not even exist. And that's where Doculock comes in. They go into small businesses and government agencies. They archive all of their old paper records so that they can be searched electronically. Right now, Doculock is expanding in 40 states, and they're looking for people to open franchises in those states. If you're properly capitalized, it doesn't take much to get started, just a scanner, a computer, and 500 square feet of space. Doculock provides the marketing and lead generation so that you can concentrate on being a successful entrepreneur. Discounts are in place for honorably discharged veterans, their spouses, and anybody who is part of the United Steelworkers Union. So click the link in the description below or go to doculockllc.com/Macbeth for more. Thanks for sticking with me. So the answer to how air defense works is this incredible mix of honest-to-God rocket scientists and soldiers with strong backs climbing in metal in all sorts of weather conditions. ADA, or Air Defense Artillery, started out as coastal artillery. See, back during the early 20th century, missiles weren't the predominant threat. Ship-to-shore bombardment was. As aircraft became more of a threat during World War II, some of these coastal artillery units became anti-aircraft artillery units. In fact, you can still see some of the old anti-aircraft artillery emplacements by the Golden Gate Bridge where they were built during World War II. So if you've ever wondered why the Army calls their air defense artillery when they use missiles now, it's because when it started, all they had were guns. Around the late 40s, early 1950s, the Army was in the middle of the Cold War. The Soviets had the atom bomb, but the only way to deliver it was through these high-flying but very slow-moving bombers. So the Army worked on a very special missile, the Nike Hercules, which was scattered around America to protect America from the looming Soviet threat. But the Nike Hercules wasn't all that mobile, and it wasn't very good for short-range or medium-range targets, so the Army worked on another missile called the Hawk. Now, the Hawk was a great missile, but it required two different radars, and the missiles were exposed to the elements, and it took a lot of personnel and equipment and vehicles just to make the thing work. So it was good, but not perfect. By the late 1960s, both systems have been showing their age. There had been advancements in computers and materials and fuel systems. Something new was needed. Enter the MIM-104 Patriot. This would be a revolutionary weapon. Instead of the multiple radars needed for the Hawk, you'd only need one radar with the Patriot. Instead of 6 launchers like with the Hawk, you could have up to 16 with the Patriot. Instead of missiles that were exposed to the elements like the Hawk, Patriot missiles would come in their own certified sealed containers. Once they left the Raytheon factory, they would never need to be inspected or maintained. So, how is this revolutionary weapon system composed? Well, it depends on real world conditions, but you'll always have the big five: the ECS, the radar, the antenna mast group, the power plant, and at least one launcher. The ECS, or engagement control station, is where the operators sit. Oftentimes, this is just called the van. The ECS will always contain one air defense artillery officer and one highly trained air defense artillery soldier. Sometimes a van might also contain a radio telephone operator who relays information that's going on around the site. The officer is known as the TCO, or Tactical Control Officer. They're known as 14 Alphas, which is the Army code for an air defense artillery officer. Note that since the van is the only piece of equipment on site that's air conditioned, oftentimes the TCO is jokingly referred to as the Temperature Control Officer. The other soldier at the console is known as the TCA, or Tactical Control Assistant. These are enlisted soldiers known as 14 Echoes, and these are some of the smartest and most capable soldiers in the entire army. So the fingers that are poised over those fatal buttons are often soldiers who just got out of high school or are a couple years graduated from college. Now, the ECS is just an air-conditioned box without radar. The Patriot's radar is known as the AN-MPQ-65. This is an extremely powerful radar unit, so powerful that they actually lay razor wire in a 120-meter arc, so that way soldiers don't get microwaved like a hot pocket when the radar is emitting. Now, if the radar is the Patriot's eyes, the antenna mast group is the voice and the ears. All of the data that's getting fed into the ECS is also getting sent to the antenna mast group, which is then transmitting that information all the way to a special place called the ICC, or Information Coordination Central. This is basically the Patriot Battalion's headquarters. You see, the Patriot battery doesn't work in a vacuum. It's usually part of 4 or 5 other batteries that send all of their data back to the ICC, which is basically where the whole air battle is coordinated. And the ICC doesn't work in a vacuum either. The ICC is sucking down data from AWACS aircraft and Navy ships. That way they can figure out how to best employ air defenses. Now, the ICC and its associated air battle space coordination centers are this mishmash of troops from all different branches and from all across NATO, and they all work together to coordinate the air battle. This is also the domain of the 14 hotels. These 14 hotels are basically enlisted soldiers who know so much about the air battle that they brief colonels and generals on what's going on and capabilities of different units. Air defense is the only place in the Army where you'll see an E4 specialist, essentially the military equivalent of the drive-through manager at a McDonald's, give briefings to full colonels and generals. And all of the information coming into the ICC is also getting forwarded to the Pentagon and even the White House. So air defense is the only job in the Army where you might have the president looking over your shoulder from thousands of miles away. There's no other Army job quite like it. In fact, there's one common joke that ADA doesn't stand for Air Defense Artillery. It really stands for a different Army. If you think about it, they should be part of the Air Force. Now, all of these electronics are powered by one generator truck that has 2 power plants, and these 2 power plants are pumping out 1,000 kilowatts of energy. That's enough to power 33 American homes for one day. But none of this stuff would work without the launchers. That's the domain of the 14 Tangos. These soldiers are experts at setting up and reloading these missiles. If the 14 Echo is the brain, the 14 Tango is the fist. There's normally 6 launchers in a battery, but remember, this is a strategic system, so there could be 8 launchers or even up to 16. When the Patriot system is deployed, it's the 14 Tango's job to erect the launchers. This is roughly a 30-minute process per launcher that involves inspecting the launcher, inspecting the system, starting the generators, making sure that the system is connected by radio and by fiber optic cable to the ECS. And sometimes they have to do this in full chemical gear. Remember, the Patriot is a strategic system. This means it is a prime target for enemy chemical weapons. Imagine changing a tire while wearing a trash bag. Now imagine having to do that 16 times, and that's basically what a 14 Tango has to do when they set up a Patriot site. The 14 Tangos also reload the missiles. This is a special procedure where the empty cans are removed and new ones are placed on, either by using a forklift or a special crane called a GMT, or guided missile trailer. Imagine playing the child's game Operation, but with a 2,000-pound canister of rocket fuel and warhead that you can't drop more than 12 inches or it might explode. Now, once all the missiles are in place, the 14 Tangos physically unlock the missiles from their travel configuration. That way, they can actually be fired from the launcher. And they turn on the missile heaters. These heaters actually prepare the fuel and guidance systems for firing. It takes about 10 to 25 minutes to warm the missiles up. Once all the launchers are set up, the hot crew is formed. This crew is going to be on shift from the next 8 to 24 hours, traveling from launcher trailer to launcher trailer, refueling the launcher trailer generators, and doing whatever the ECS needs them to do, like inspect a launcher that stopped communicating with the ECS. The end result looks something like this. All of this is controlled by a local TOC, or Tactical Operations Center. You might find some 14 hotels in the TOC managing the air battle, but it's mainly where the commander and any ancillary personnel sit. Now, as far as personnel, an ADA battery is normally composed of 100 to 120 soldiers and commanded by an ADA branch captain. Patriot battery is normally split up into 3 or 4 platoons. The headquarters platoon is responsible for running the battery. This contains the supply people, the communications people, and it also contains the warrant officers, known as 140 Alphas and 140 Kilos. These warrant officers are the most technically proficient soldiers in the entire battery. They are literal rocket scientists, walking gods of surface-to-air warfare knowledge. Then you have the roughly 20 to 30 soldier fire control platoon. This platoon is run by an air defense artillery officer, usually a lieutenant, and these soldiers work in the TOC or in the ECS, and sometimes they're sent up to the next higher headquarters to manage the air battle. Finally, there's the launch crew. This is roughly 30 or so soldiers led by a lieutenant. And once the launches are all set up, it becomes their job to be part of the hot crew to service all the launchers, make sure the generators are refilled, and they also pull security around the perimeter of the site. That's what it takes to operate the site. Now let's talk about the actual missiles. Now the Patriot has had a long history, but there's basically 2 families of missiles that exist today. The PAC-2 family and the PAC-3 family. The PAC-2 missiles are older. They come in the famous Quad series of cans. These missiles have proximity warheads, which are designed to detonate when they get very close to a target, killing the target in a cone of shrapnel. Oftentimes, when Patriot crewmen get to launch a real missile, they launch a PAC-2 missile because the fuel in these missiles actually expires, and it's easier to launch the missile in training than it is to send the missile back to Raytheon to be destroyed. PAC-3 missiles are a little bit newer, and they're different because they actually are designed to hit the target and destroy it with pure kinetic energy. This means they needed a guidance update package because you're basically hitting a bullet with a bullet. And there's even a more advanced version of the PAC-3 called the PAC-3 MSE. So if you ever see a Patriot missile system that looks like a weird-looking Lego set, that's a combination of PAC-3 missiles and PAC-3 MSE missiles. Now, the missiles are useless without the radar, and it's the Patriot radar system that makes it so brilliant. Most surface-to-air missile systems have 2 radars and sometimes 3. There's the search radar that actually goes and finds the target. There's the illuminator radar, which tells the missile where it needs to go. And sometimes the missile will have its own guidance radar, which kicks in the last few seconds of flight to try to find that target. Now, radar is really just radio frequency energy. Think of it like a flashlight beam, except in a spectrum of light that we can't see. When we shine a flashlight beam on someone, we might see the target, but the target knows that someone's shining a flashlight at it. Most aircraft have sensors that let them know when they're being detected by search radar. And they also have sensors that let them know when they're being illuminated by illumination radar. But the Patriot doesn't have an illumination radar. It just has a search radar that does double duty as an illuminator. So the pilot is never going to know that they've been illuminated. So here's how the system works. When the Patriot's radar detects a target, it sends that targeting information into the ECS for the operators to make a decision. If the operators are in semi-automatic mode, they can choose to fire at the target. If they're in automatic mode, the Patriot system itself will decide to fire at the target. That's right. The Patriot can track over 100 targets, and it's been able to do this since 1980, like Skynet. When the system is directed to fire, the missile will shoot out of the launcher, and the Patriot system will try to capture that missile. If it doesn't capture the missile within 4 seconds, the missile will self-destruct. If it does capture the missile, the system will guide the missile toward the target. Now, a couple of interesting things happen in the terminal phases of flight for the Patriot. As the missile gets close to its target, the radar system sends up an enormous amount of RF energy directed at that target. A seeker in the missile looks for this reflected energy. This is called TVM, or track via missile. This sudden increase in RF energy might be the first clue the pilot has that a missile is about to hit him, but he doesn't have a lot of time to deploy any countermeasures. Now, at this point, the missile and the radar system have a vote to determine whether they're looking at the same target. If the two systems disagree, the radar will take over and tell it which target to hit. If the enemy aircraft turns on a jammer to try to confuse the missile will actually switch over into another mode called home on jam and go directly after the jammer. So if you do nothing, the Patriot kills you. If you turn on a jammer, the Patriot kills you. Pretty clever, huh? Now, the average day in a Patriot crewman's life involves a lot of testing. You'll often hear the words Table 4, Table 8, and Table 12. These tables are essentially tests that test both the individual soldier's abilities and the abilities of the platoon and the battery collectively. This constant testing and complexity of subject matter is one of the reasons 14 Echoes require such a high intelligence score when joining the Army. And once they join, they deploy. ADA soldiers get deployed more than special forces. While you are sitting here watching this video, at this very moment, there are soldiers in Poland, Japan, Korea, and the United Arab Emirates with their fingers poised over the button, ready to stop a ballistic missile attack. So that being said, let me take you to a Patriot battery in the United Arab Emirates. They're guarding Al Dhafra Air Base. It's January 24th, 2022. There's civilian traffic out there tonight, families and businessmen on their way to Jakarta, Karachi, Islamabad. There's no electronics permitted inside the ECS, so the TCO and TCA fill their 8-hour shift with mundane talk all soldiers share as the night wears on.
What the hell? Ma'am, are you seeing? Contact track 158, contact track 159, contact track 160.
Hit the alarm, real world. ICC, this is firing unit 4. Fireball, 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 over.
Firing unit 4, this is ICC. We are tracking multiple TBMs. Weapons free, IFF and engage if hostile.
TCA, select and interrogate TBMs.
IFF, no response.
Engage tracks 158, 159, 160.
Track 158, engaged. Track 159, engaged. 160, engaged. Birds away, track 158. Birds away, track 159. Birds away, track 160. Splash track 158. Splash track 159. Splash track 160.
Splash all 3 TBM tracks confirmed.
The Patriot system just saved countless lives. And this scenario actually happened in January of 2022. In many ways, the Patriot is the big brother of the world, protecting little guys against bullies since 1991. This video took roughly 80 hours of work between interviews and research and developing the graphics for systems I wasn't actually allowed to look at. I'd like to thank Specialist Ashton Fields, Specialist Andrew, and PFC Anthony Tarraco for their incredible knowledge and assistance in developing this video. There are also about 14 other soldiers in the United States Army and in the Israeli Defense Forces who were very patient with me during these interviews, learning about how systems are erected and how radar works. This video would not have been possible without you. Thank you. And thank you so much to you, the viewer, for watching.